asked you guys to comment any questions you might have about Phasmophobia, and in this video, I'm going to be answering them. Now, I got a lot of questions from you guys, but I'm only going to be answering one per person, and I couldn't get to all of them. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting with the question that I get asked the most. What is the timer that I use in my videos? This timer is an application called LiveSplit, which is what a lot of speedrunners use, but I tend to use it for Phasmophobia as a smudge timer. I'm not going to give a full tutorial, but there are a lot of settings that you can tinker with, and you can also set hotkeys to start, pause, and stop the timer whenever you want. It is very, very useful for Phasmophobia, and I highly recommend it. Moving on to a question asked by TNK. When can you safely cross out each evidence type? So there are 3 evidence types that you can 100% rule out with certainty, that being ghost orbs, ghost writing, and UV. Orbs are very easy to check for. Obviously, all you need to do is walk around with the video cam. Check the ghost room, of course, but if you don't see any orbs in the ghost room, I would also check any adjacent rooms in the off chance the ghost is changing rooms or being stingy. If you don't see any orbs, you can 100% cross it out. Ghost writing can be crossed out if you see the ghost interact with the writing book in any way without writing in it. That includes closing the book and throwing the book. As for UV, the best way that I would recommend to rule out UV would be to get the ghost to walk through salt. Footsteps now count as UV evidence, and salt is a great way to force the ghost to give UV. So if the ghost steps in the salt and you hear footsteps, but you don't see any footprints with the UV, you can cross it out. The same goes for if you see the ghost touch any doors, windows, or coolers. If you see no UV after the ghost touches those, you can rule it out with 100% certainty. As for the rest of the evidence types, the ghost can be very stubborn, and it can be risky to rule them out, so be patient, be persistent, and I appreciate the question. Glorious Cat asks, which tier is best for each piece of equipment? And going on, they specifically ask about the Crucifix and the Incense. They ask specifically if the Tier 3 Crucifix is better for doing the Onryo test. Now, I'm not going to cover every piece of equipment, as that would take its own video, but when it comes to the Crucifix, the Tier 3 Crucifix should be just as useful as the Tier 2 when it comes to doing the Onryo test. It has the exact same functionality, just with an extended range, and it can prevent cursed hunts, which are irrelevant if we're talking about the Onryo test. When it comes to using Incense, I don't use Tier 2 or Tier 3 because they alter the ghost's natural speed, making it harder to listen for what type of ghost it is. It does make it easier to escape, but it comes at the cost of making it harder to identify the ghost. That's why I generally stick to Tier 1. Thank you for the question. Icebuild asks, do Mylings actually play more sounds through the Paramic, or is that a myth? That's not a myth. Mylings will more frequently give whispers and other paranormal sounds through the Paramic. My only tip would be to not rely on it for no evidence runs. If you're hearing a lot of sounds through the Paramic, you could reasonably lean toward it being a Myling, but I would make sure to narrow it down a bit more first, just to be sure. Thank you for asking. Nathan asks, can all ghosts close doors? I thought it was just a yokai, but what if you leave the door barely open? So every ghost type in the game can interact with doors. That includes opening and closing doors regardless of whether the door was already slightly open beforehand. The only ghost that has a unique ability regarding doors is the Yuri. The Yuri can double touch and slam doors, and when it does that, it'll drain your sanity. Not only that, but the Yuri is also the only ghost that can interact with the front door. Thank you for the question. Power Requiem asks, what is the best way to find the ghost room? So there are a few different ways to find the ghost room easily, and it boils down to a few factors such as map size and how much the ghost is going to be changing its favorite room. But most of the time, the only loadout you need to find the ghost room is a flashlight, an EMF reader, and most importantly now in my opinion, is a thermometer. The first thing you should do is check the map for the breaker. Once you know where the breaker is, go turn it on. When you turn on the breaker, the temperatures throughout the entire building will warm up. That includes every room except for the ghost room. So all you have to do is walk around with the thermometer until you notice temps that are considerably lower than any other room. Meanwhile, you're checking for interactions, objects being thrown, doors being touched, and you're listening closely to make sure you can pinpoint where the ghost is. And you're checking EMF in the process. If you're on a larger map, I'd recommend swapping the EMF for a Paramic, since pinpointing the exact location of interactions can be difficult otherwise, but all of that combined will be the fastest way to find the ghost room. I hope that helps, and thank you for the question. Audrey asks, can the ghost interact with the book or dots from another room? So when it comes to dots, the ghost model that you see walking through the light is the actual ghost, so it wouldn't make sense to see it in dots if it were in another room. As for ghost writing, the book has a set radius around it. My best guess would be that the ghost can only interact with it when it is within that set radius. So if the radius of the writing book extends into another room, and the ghost is in that room, then sure, the ghost could technically interact with it from another room. But regardless, your best bet would always be to gather evidence from the ghost room itself. Thank you for the question. Now, this next question is technically two, but I combined them into one because of their similarity. Paris Fletcher asks, which ghosts made the most hilarious times for me, and which ghosts made the most boring times for me? The ghost that has made the most hilarious moments for me has easily been the poltergeist, and my friends and I find it hilarious whenever a polty explosion happens. I needed to do the thing. Yes, I got it! I needed that for my video. As for the ghost that has made the most boring times for me, that would unsurprisingly be the Shade. I remember distinctly for case number 2000, me and my team were at Brownstone High School. And no joke, we stood in the ghost room for 10 to 20 minutes with the ghost doing absolutely nothing, before finally deciding to leave. Great question. Kanar asks, is the poltergeist the only ghost that can throw objects when the lights are on? I wasn't 100% sure of this, so I spent a few games testing just to see if the ghost would ever throw anything with the lights on. For the first game I had a Goryo, and for the second game I had a Yokai. I spent roughly 10 minutes during each game just waiting to see if it would ever throw anything with the lights on. And I got nothing. When I finally tested this with a poltergeist, well, this is what happened. Holy. I think that solves that. Yep. It's Jack asks, if you could change one thing about Phasmophobia, what would it be? I honestly would love it if the game had less medium and large maps and more small maps. Whenever I play solo, I mostly play on maps like Tanglewood or Willow, so I think the game would be a lot less repetitive for me personally if we had more small Tanglewood-sized maps. My joy in playing this game comes primarily from solving the ghost type, not searching for the ghost for 30 minutes, and then getting hunted by the time I find it. And I think a lot of other players feel the same way. Thank you for the question. Milan asks, how do you not get jump scared? Trust me, when you see the same stock asset ghosts running at you over 2,000 times, the jump scares become like nothing. I have no soul. Oh my gosh! But here's the deal, if you want to become less scared of the game, my best advice would be to turn off item loss, crank up your speed, go in with 0 sanity, grab a flashlight, and intentionally get hunted over and over again. Even if the ghost kills you, you won't lose anything. It would be purely for the purposes of overcoming the fear. The bottom line is, when you do this enough, the fear just goes away. And in the process, you'd be practicing looping, escaping, and even identifying the ghost. I appreciate the question. TWTTS asks, what is your favorite item? My favorite item is a thermometer. If it weren't for this update, it would probably be the Paramic, but with this update, the devs really improved upon the Tier 2 and Tier 3 thermo. And it almost works the exact same as it did when the game first launched in 2020. The only difference being that you need to hold down right click, and then it'll automatically update. I honestly find myself using the thermo way more than the EMF reader for finding the ghost room now. Thank you for asking. Thank you to everyone who left a question. I loved making this. And I might make more videos like this in the future. Just make sure to leave only one question below. Who knows, if you guys like this enough, maybe I'll turn it into a series. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.